Okay, hey everyone. So I am just making the video that I said I'd make to walk us through how to finish up, as well as to go back and check your experiment one bounce height write up. We worked on this in class today. So I'll just quickly review the first steps, and then I will explain the last two in more detail. So, step one was the research question, which we have in our class notebook. And again, this is in the lab notes section. And once you get to lab notes, you can click on experiment one. So the second part was research. And what you do for the research is pretty much gather three relevant facts that are relevant to the research question. So the facts that I wrote came directly from the lab manual. So I would suggest that be your first source of information, but you could also use things that we discussed in class, anything you learned from videos that we watched, etc. The next step was the hypothesis, and that's step three. So you write an if-then statement. So if the height from which the bouncy ball is dropped is increased, then the bounce height of the ball will increase. Because, right? So make sure, one, you are putting these in your own words and you're also writing your own hypothesis. These are just for the sake of example, so I shouldn't see this when I go to grade your assignment on Friday. Okay. Step four, the summary. For the summary, the first couple sentences summarizes what's happening in the experiment. And you can find that information right below, right here, in step five. So read the procedure and then just summarize what steps happen in the experiment. After that, you want to make sure that you identify the constant, the independent variable, the dependent variable. And if you don't remember what those are, go back to your Unit 1 lab manual. Even if you can't find it in OneNote, it is in Unified Classroom. Okay. Then we get to the scientific diagram. You're pretty much just drawing a picture of what you think the setup is going to look like, right? Given that we know the material. So we know we have a bouncy ball, a measuring tape, and some masking tape. So this is the image that I drew. So we have the measuring tape, right? Because we want to see, we have to make sure that we measure the height from which we're dropping the ball, as well as the height from which that the ball's going to bounce to. So I drew my measuring tape, drew the ball, ground, and I labeled them. That's it. You're pretty much just drawing what you think the experiment setup would look like. To be able to draw, make sure that you click on draw, right? Then you will select your writing utensil. You can choose color, type, size of the point, all that stuff. Some of you guys may have a finger, so right next to the highlighter you have a little finger with a red squiggly line. You want to click on that, and that enables you to draw on the screen. Step 7, the data. So what you have to do here is calculate the averages for each test. So based on the procedure, we know that the ball was dropped from a different height three different heights, 5 times from each different height. So from 100 centimeters, the ball was dropped 5 times. From 150 centimeters, the ball was dropped 5 times. From 200 centimeters, the ball was also dropped 5 times. So what you want to do is calculate the average for those 5 trials, right? So for example, the test at 100 centimeters, I calculated the average of, I did not mean to write on that, in case you saw that. Calculate the average for these numbers. And you want to put this here. And then for test 2, calculate the average for these numbers. and you want to put this here. Test 3, you calculate the average for these numbers and put it here. When you create your graph, you are graphing the drop height and the average bounce height. So you're only going to be plotting 3 points. Then you have to decide which is my dependent variable, which is my independent. But you should have written that in your summary, so all you should have to do is go back and look at it. Okay? So in this case, the drop height is independent, so that's going to go on my x, and the bounce height is dependent, that's going to go on my y. Okay? To create this graph, you're going to be using the chartgo.com, as I showed you to use it in class. So chartgo.com. It's really hard to write on this thing with my mouse, so just bear with me. Let me see if I can show you. Okay, chartgo.com. So we go ahead and we select create graph, and you want to make sure that you put in your graph title. So bounce height versus drop height. Then you just want to fill in the x-axis title, which we said was drop height. And one thing I forgot to mention was that we always want to use our units. So we're going to put centimeters, and then bounce height, I'm going to put that as well, and then I'm going to put centimeters here as well. Then everything else you just leave it, right? But what I want you to do is to put your data in. So we know we're dropping it from 100, 150, and 200. And then I don't remember the averages exactly, but let's say 55, 89, 115, whatever. Then press create graph. It will give you a bar graph, but we want a line graph. And here's our graph. Then you want to just use your snipping tool, as I showed you in class, and you want to paste it in here. The last step, which is your hypothesis. So first you are restating your hypothesis, right? So you already wrote this in step 3. All you're going to do is restate it. Then you make a claim. You say whether or not your hypothesis was true. Then you want to make sure that you use data from the table, right? Use this data up here in step 7 to support your point. Okay, and that should bring you through the entire scientific process. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, and tomorrow I will be after school as well.